Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of the witnesses for being here. I also would like to explore some possible solutions here, some proactive steps that we can take to address what's become a very critical problem. And I want to talk a little bit about my own proposal, the Homeland Security Counterintelligence Threat Reduction Act. It's a mouthful, but it's a big problem, and a proposal that I put forward with others and developed partly with the help of DHS. So I'll talk about that in just a second. First, let me just reference a letter that I found striking from the director of the White House's Office of Science and Technology Policy. That letter notes that American research institutions have historically benefited from the foreign talent recruitment programs that we're talking about here today, but observes that now in this new era of government-sponsored science, what was once a benefit has now become really a liability for us, as you have been pointing to in your testimony. And we're seeing, I think, how China abuses our open education system to directly benefit their military and their government. And I have to say, having visited the streets of Hong Kong myself just a month ago, I can say that I have personally seen what the Chinese government is doing with technology that it has acquired in part from the United States, and how it is weaponizing it against its own citizens, against Chinese citizens on the streets of Hong Kong and elsewhere. Let me start, if I could, Mr. Amatowski, with you. I recognize that your Bureau has relatively limited scope when it comes to the broader problem set here of technology and research theft, in that your mandate is confined to visas. But I was somewhat surprised to learn, I have to say, from the subcommittee's excellent report, for which I thank the chairman, that less than 5% of those visa applications have been denied, and that apparently the Bureau lacks a systematic means of tracking visa applications that are linked to China's talent programs. Can you tell us why that is the case and explain what the current situation is?
Yes, Senator. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the authority of consular officers to deny visas on the basis of suspect technology transfer is quite limited, and is basically limited to items or technologies that are on an the export control list maintained by the Department of Commerce. So when we screen visa applicants for potential access to export controlled technologies, that covers only a small percentage of the total, and that results in only comparatively few refusals.
Then maybe it seems to me that the implication of what you're saying is maybe we ought to be putting additional technologies on the export control list, particularly those that we know that the Chinese government has a very distinct interest in, like the Made in China program, for instance. I think there's 25 separate technologies that are targeted there. Maybe those ought to go on the export control list. I mean, what's your view on that?
Yes, we would welcome working with the committee and the Congress and other agencies to close those gaps.
Yeah, I think that is a very urgent need, and I've proposed doing just that, and so look forward to working with you on that. Let me ask you about something else in this vein. Do you think that a task force would help with this? A task force stood up to review programs, make recommendations about improving counterintelligence vetting, conduct counterintelligence awareness training for faculty of colleges and universities, enhance the requirements of the student exchange visa program. Would sort of tightening like this, would that be helpful?
In my opinion, Senator, outreach like that is very useful to raise consciousness about the seriousness of the problem. Yes, sir.
Well, I agree with you, and I hope that those are solutions that we might take up and that this committee might take up. Dr. Lauer, let me come back to you. NIH has been at the center of a number of high-profile cases that have been reported in the media related to the issues we're discussing today, like the husband and wife working at Emory as neuroscientists who double-dipped on both American and Chinese research funds before they were caught, the Los Alamos physicists who lied about participating in the Thousand Talents program was eventually charged. In your testimony, I noted, your written testimony, you state that individuals violating laws and policies represent a small proportion of scientists working in and with U.S. institutions. And yet, and this is the part that concerns me, this subcommittee's report notes that your Division of Grant Compliance has dropped in its site visits from 28 in 2012 to only 3 last year. Tell me about that. What kind of oversight is currently in place at NIH, and how can you be confident that your testimony is accurate given the oversight capabilities and tools you currently have?
Thank you, Senator. As the chairman mentioned, we don't really know the extent of the problem. We do know that the number of integrity cases overall and foreign influence concerns in particular have gone up dramatically. We now have a caseload that's in the hundreds and has been mentioned publicly. We're now looking at over 140 scientists of concern.
Are there additional tools, Dr. Lauer, that you think you need in order to conduct rigorous oversight?
We do work very closely with other agencies, and in particular with law enforcement and intelligence. I think that over the past year in particular, that degree of cooperation and joint learning has dramatically increased, and I think there's no question that that's helped us to identify problems and also to address them as we work with individual institutions.
Thank you. Dr. Kaiser, finally for you, you noted at a recent event at UCLA that theft of research by China is very different in kind from the sorts of threats we faced, say, in the 1990s, when our biggest concern was that research dollars would go to former Soviet weapons scientists. I just wonder, at a 30,000-foot view, do you think our research institutions are seeing this difference in kind clearly? Are they clearly understanding that we're dealing with a qualitatively different issue, different problem, different challenge now than we were 20 years ago? What's been your experience?
Senator, I think that they do. I think that the fact that the nature of the threat is so different today, meaning before it was dual use, it was proliferation, it was things that we are used to dealing with in the classification system and the export control system and controlling. Because the difference is so strong now about threats to research integrity, to our openness, to our transparency, that are creating economic benefit in China. It's been a challenge, I think, to convey why this is a threat. Why is openness a threat? Well, openness is a threat because it's being used in ways that we are very, very concerned about. So as we've been talking more and more to the research community, I think they are understanding that these threats in the area of research integrity are jeopardizing our whole system. I mean, this is a system, as I said, that has made America incredibly successful. We want to make sure it's open, but others are taking advantage of it. And I think we have an increased understanding of that throughout the community.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this excellent report and the work of the subcommittee, and thank you for your continued leadership on this very important topic.